Hi there, I'm the RBIm guy. Now, some people say, I don't understand what you're talking about sometimes because your English and grammar is a bit different on your website. Well, I like to tell people I'm not a native English speaker, and that might happen. Or it might be some other reason for it that's the way I want to express and, say things the way I say things. Whatever reasons. A lot of people say, I don't know what this self is. And I'm like, what is self? People are trying for about 2,000 years to think about, this, self. And you have the famous statues in different places that, they have a hand under their head and they look up and like that, wow, to the sky or, heaven or whatever people was thinking, But that's one of the thinking poses. Or this one. They bow their head in. Now, what some would say, that's representational system or accessing cues or whatever. I don't know. What I found out this last year is about if you want to work with people, you can do it differently. You can do a change work. For example, if you want to stop smoking, losing weight, or make a change in your life. A lot of people have some idea what will work for that change or whatever it is. And if you apply that, most likely it won't work. Which is interesting by itself. Because you will fight your own system. Now, you can try to transform your meaning of stuff. The meaning of whatever, losing weight or stop smoking or, making, transformations in your life. But you still need to do it. And I found out that that's really complex to do. It's really difficult because basically you have to understand the individual or yourself in that manner to then be able to move yourself into this kind of new experience you want to have. That's really complicated. And you also have the conflict in the system if you try to do so, because reality is what reality is for us. So, seriously. It gets really difficult and complex to do it. So what I found out doing modeling, which is what I do, is that to some reason, if we reset self and locate it, I don't know what it is. When I do modeling, I build models. I don't understand the model, why it is the way it is. I understand it produces a result, which is pretty interesting in itself. If the model produces a result, then if we can predict the result every time, the model then works, right? Which is interesting by itself. So I have a model, and it works, and I can produce the result every time that's predictable. That's pretty cool if you ask me. That's what I like. If I understand, I get this instruction to do a golf swing, then I can apply the instruction and get feedback, and then suddenly I can do a golf swing. That's amazing, because there is no one out there that can do that to you. Which is, by itself, after 150 years of modern golf, that no one has come up with. Well, I did, but that's besides the point today. So, we try to make a change, transformation, we get into the system of people, and I found, what will happen if we make a reference to ourselves? Some people say, what do you mean by self? Well, you have a reference to who you are, that you have an entire reference to whatever consciousness you have, or, what that is. But here's the thing, we can't really understand it, or we can't really, access it. We can just pinpoint it. So we can localize it. I ask questions like contrast. So yourself, is it outside or inside you? And people go, what do you mean? Well, it's inside your body, or, or it's outside, and people go, well, it's inside. Because if you ask them this kind of question, is the self located inside you? And people go, what do you mean? Because you can't make a contrast. You have to make a contrast, you have to have two options going like this. Is it inside or outside of it? Okay. Well, then you can say, well, it can't be outside, it feels more like it's inside. Or someone says, well, it's not inside, it feels more like it's outside. That's what you do with the brain. And one time say, oh, it's inside me. Then you go another contrasting question. Is it above or below? Or to the left, or to the right, or in the front, or in the back? If you kind of do this kind of three-dimensional spatial contrasting to localize where self is, you will find it. Once you find it, it's like anything else. If you take your keys and put them in the drawer, or if you put your take your socks and put them in the drawer, you know where they are. You can go back and check them out. They're still there. Nice. The key is still there where I left it. Unless the dog took it. But I don't have a dog. That's strange. You understand that? If you put something somewhere, you know where it is. Like in the drawer with socks, or where you put your keys or anything else. You know where they are. You don't need to go out. Where did I put them? Naturally, you would do that if you didn't think much about what you were doing. Some people even forget where they park their car, which is pretty amazing by itself. You drive to the parking mall, and you leave your car, and you go into the parking mall and go like, where did I leave my car? If it's a big parking mall, I can understand that. I mean, Seinfeld did a whole episode about that. They couldn't find the car. And the reason why they can't find the car is that people are doing things that what some would say out of awareness, when you're not paying attention to the environment. And that means you're more internally focusing on your representations in that way, or you're thinking about something, you're going to buy a car, or you're going to go meet someone, or you're going to have and you're preoccupied with that kind of thinking. So you don't really pay attention where you park your car, or where you leave your keys, or then you go, where is my phone? Where is my phone? I need to find my phone. I put it somewhere. Someone stole my dog, but I don't have a dog. So where is it? So that's kind of thinking we do, that we are a little bit more preoccupied with ourselves, that we don't pay attention to the outside. The same thing is true with ourselves. If we put our attention and we locate ourselves, if we put our attention there, we can go back there and check that we have that kind of reference. Now, the interesting thing here, what I found about that, is that you make a reset then, a reboot the system, that people's brain has to adapt to this, because the brain goes creating scenarios all the time. It's going to go, I want to go there from here. So you have some information, you have some memory, you have some personal experience, and you have your life, and the brain goes, okay, I have my life here, and then I'm going to project that into the future. That's what the brain does all the time. It never stops. I tried to stop my brain, and it didn't want to be stopped. It just kept going and going. You understand that? It never stopped. You try meditation, for example. People who try to meditate, they go like, shut up, shut up, shut up, because they, internal dialogue, it's never silent, it's all of this. I'm trying to relax, I'm trying to relax, it does go, And it takes a lot of practice to get meditation working. And then you have to sit down doing 20 minutes and go like, I'm too bored to do that. So if your brain is still constantly projecting in scenarios and scenarios and scenarios all the time, the question is, where does that information come from inside you that it always is projecting to the future? This is the Skynet version of whatever you're thinking, Wow, how is the future? I haven't created the future. I mean, why are you coming back from the future here? Well, I'm come to save you and then make you a child so we can save the future. I don't know. Oh, wow, that's a paradox. Oh, that's kind of funny in some way. That's kind of my kind of line of thinking. But here's the thing. We ask a contrasting question. We locate ourselves, and we locate ourselves. We put our attention there now and then, or during the day, a few days, a week or two. Suddenly our brain has to adapt to that to create scenarios from that kind of position. Well, the physics of this, or whatever you call it, is interesting. Because what happens, which is really interesting if you ask me, is the brain adapts to that. But since you then have a baseline of self, that means whatever context, whatever perception, whatever memory you have, doesn't really matter anymore. In the way the brain creates scenarios, suddenly you go like, oh yeah, this is where I should start my projection of myself. Oh yeah, okay. And I'll go back and I'll go back. And then you have a separation going on, a categorization or sorting or whatever you call it, that you're suddenly aware of what you can or can't do, which is really interesting if you ask me. But people say, well, this seems like really simple too easy. And it doesn't feel like I'm making a change. I say that's the point. Once you start to get your brain into this self-reference, sooner or later you're gonna get, wow, I'm feeling a little more centered. I'm feeling a little bit more, presently aware of whatever you call it. And I'm going, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I know. That's and you find that your meditation suddenly is not needed because you're calming down. Your system goes into this, serenity, whatever you call it, peaceful mind connection with yourself. And then you're able to start choosing what kind of stuff you want to engage into. I wrote about this RBIm 3.0. I have RBIm, steps, whatever you call it. Over the years, I started with North NLP protocol. I demonstrated it back in 2004, which is a world-class performance change produced. That I demonstrated that on stage in Muhong with a guy, and the change stuck the second day. It was 50 people there, no one asked me about it. And I was like, why don't people ask me about that change that stuck from one day to the next? That's pretty amazing, I said. And it was really easy to do it also, because it didn't involve change. And the guy who went through the process, he was some kind of psychologist, something like that. He didn't ask me. I mean, that's amazing itself. So I'm asking, well, why don't people ask me? This is really strange phenomenon. Why don't they ask me? They should ask questions because it's really, I think it's really interesting. So after a while, I was thinking, maybe, okay. So I started revisions, right? And I'm into the 3.0 at the time now. And I made a revision history and pointed out that when you have yourself, a reference to yourself, then you can identify with context. You can create a contextual identification, and then you will produce beliefs, and then you produce your values and all that. And that all of those logical levels I talk about is fed upon each other. So once you identify, that will create beliefs, values, that will create all that stuff, and that will lead to behavior. All those levels are connected. There's no, they look, when you use language, right? And I use a level. People go like, okay, mine level 1, level 2, and level 3. You have a stack of levels now, and there is no separation. And I go like, people take the elevator, that's always connected to the levels. And people go, what? Well, if you take the elevator, it's always connected to the levels. And people go, yeah. So that means the elevator has to connect to all the levels at some point. And yes, but the levels are, separated by, levels. Because the brain goes like that when you're thinking. But the elevator is always connected to all the levels, because you can take the elevator and choose what level you want to end up with. So the elevator metaphor, or whatever you call it, it's just a way of showing. If you take the elevator, you can pinpoint any levels at any time, but they all happen at the same time, because the building is still standing there and all the levels are there to work. So that's kind of interesting, I think. So the logical levels of RBIm is that it describes the process the brain thinks. So you go like, if you have yourself, you have a reference to self. I have this serenity, the silence in my head and my body starts to affect me. I feel more like in peaceful mindset. I feel really presently aware, nice. But I'm only, putting my attention to myself. That's kind of interesting. And I feel more, wow, I can connect to other people much more easily. Oh, that's kind of strange concept, some people say. And here's the thing, once you have that, you can identify context, people, what you do in work, whatever it is. And that will forward, whatever you call it, forward the next phase, that's beliefs about that. That will create values and criteria and all that stuff. And it will create behaviors based on that. So that will, the identification will loop beliefs, values, criteria, behaviors, and it will continue like that, right? That's a loop. That's what the brain is doing all the time. Once you reset to yourself, reboot yourself, something different happens. All this identification, all other stuff is different. It's a different process. You're not stuck in you need to change. You're not stuck in I need to transform my life and, becoming something. Because you're already, sitting down in reference to yourself and go, wow, this is, me, experiencing me. That's kind of cool concept. And it doesn't feel special because a lot of people never done that, because when we're growing up, we are always engaging into the environment. We're always engaging into our parents, our family, school, work, relaxed time, the culture, religion, political, all other stuff, and a lot of things going on in most people's life that happens, out there. And they create context, we create them all in our head, but that's beside the point for today's talk. This is about, if we reset ourselves, we're using a contrasting question, right? So we ask it, it's outside, inside, out, down, and we can locate this out. All we need to do is put the attention there and let the brain do what it does. It will then start a recursive, going back and project that, going back and project that. But if you reference yourself, sooner or later you will have a reference from yourself into whatever world. That's kind of cool, because you can be more presently aware. You can, I don't know, have freedom to choose your experience, And I also developed over the last year, I've been 50 years now, for a year now, and I found out how to do a goal swing and build one that's world class. I found out how to do an RBIm process much better, and develop the self-reference, and it simplifies the work. So if you're going to do change work or transformation, you work as a coach or a therapist or whatever, you need to start doing this, because it's really easy. Because when you train people to do this, whatever problems, whatever life they have, doesn't matter that way, because you don't need to deal with that. You can start to experience the world the way I think you were meant to be experiencing. And I talk about neurological reasons there. I don't talk about conceptual reasons like beliefs or faith or whatever. Even though faith will have some truth in this, because if it's meant to be experienced that way, that includes some way beliefs and faith and all that. It's always a recursive time loop or paradoxes going on, and since the brain never shuts, off, it's always projecting. Even if you meditate, if you do 30 years of meditation or 50 years of meditation, the brain is still working that way. It just changes the way you perceive the information you are presently engaged into, with, which is interesting by itself. I mean, I don't know if anyone is going to watch it, by the way. So normally you would say something in the end like this: if you did watch all this video tape and thought, wow, this is interesting, you should read, you should write something on my website, notnlp.com, and you should write something like, I was there with the RBIm guy, or something like that, something funny. What do you think is funny? My kind of humor and jokes and all that stuff is kind of the dark side meets the funny side of Family Guy and Star Wars, something like that. Because if I would remake Star Wars, it would be totally different Star Wars. And people go, well, I don't think that's Star Wars. Well, you have Star Wars, that's one movie, and now this is a different Star Wars, a different movie, and people will go, I don't know if that's funny. I think it's really funny. So humor is one way of expressing different opinions, and some jokes work, some doesn't. Way of life, I guess. So that's what I do. I'm trying to reset or reboot people into the self-awareness. And some people will say, isn't that dangerous? I mean, people might be megalomaniac. And I say, I don't think so. Because if you have reference to self, that's different than you have reference to identification, because identification includes context from whatever world, from what people learn in the world. So try that. Find a way, locate yourself, put your awareness, attention there, and check in now and then during the day. Do that for a few weeks, and you find out what happens. I don't know. And some people say, well, I have a little bit of trouble. Well, I have some Skype chats, or I have a website, you can, communicate with me. And ask a smart question, you will get hopefully a smart answer. I may write something that might not make no sense, then ask her for clarification, helps. And well, that's all for me. I can talk about a few hours more, but I'm kind of now going back to my coffee now, and I'm going to write some, few lines of code on my webpage. Well, it's actually words and grammar in an order that I can express whatever I'm trying to say. And if you find it interesting, make a comment, and I was there watching the video. Or I was watching the video and I was really bored, and it didn't make sense to me. And most people will say, well, this doesn't make sense and all that stuff. And I like to say, did you try to do it? And people say, well, no, I was reading about it or watching it, listening to what you're talking about. It doesn't make sense to me, this self. And I go like, well, did you do the process? No, I didn't do the process. Well, that's why it doesn't make sense, because you're still projecting your life ahead of you, and your brain is always doing that. People say, well, there is no unconscious mind. If you're doing RBIm, which I'm presenting here, you can't believe in the unconscious mind. It doesn't exist. And I can prove to people that you can control your lives without any unconscious mind influences whatsoever. And people go like, what? The concept? And I know. But you try, doing this kind of assume that you can't have an unconscious mind. You can't do hypnosis here. It's not possible. You can't do NLP here. It's not possible. It doesn't include in the model. Because this is, a model of, I don't know, legendary awesome. And just wait for it.